Chapter 13. Boy Wanted. It seemed to take Rusty Wren's wife a long time to recover from the fright that Jasper Jay had given her. He had amused himself by dropping cherries upon the roof of the house. But the trick had not amused the Wren family in the least. Even after Johnny Green had driven the blue-coated rascal away from the dooryard, Mrs. Rusty Wren was all aflutter. She jumped at the slightest noise, and she was so nervous that Rusty soon saw that it was a great effort for her to get abroad for food for their hungry family. "You must stay right here at home and rest," he urged her. "I'll find enough for the children to eat and for you too," he said manfully. And really, there was nothing else that his wife could do, for her nerves were in a frightful state. So Rusty Wren took up his task cheerfully. He found it no easy one either. Feeding 6 growing youngsters had kept both their parents working every minute all day long, because the children were always clamoring for more food. And now they seemed half-starved, for they had had nothing to eat all that time that Jasper Jay had kept Rusty and his wife hiding in their house. Rusty Wren, however, was not one to complain, no matter what happened, and every day from dawn till dark, he hurried out of the house to find some toothsome insect to bring it home and drop it into somebody's yawning mouth. Indeed, he was so busy feeding his family that he scarcely had a chance to eat anything himself, so he grew quite thin. And though he still sang as merrily as ever, his wife noticed the change that had come over him. Naturally, that made her worry, and since worrying was bad for her nerves, she began to grow worse instead of better. "I don't know what's going to become of us," she said at last. "As the children grow bigger, they need more to eat, and I can see plainly that you are never going to be able to provide enough for them." "Oh, they'll soon be old enough to leave home and catch their own insects," Rusty told her hopefully. "And until that time comes, I'll manage somehow, even if I have to work after dark." But that plan did not suit his wife at all. "I shouldn't care to stay alone in the house at night with 6 small children," she said. "That will never do." "I have it," Rusty cried suddenly. "I'll get somebody to help me." Well, his wife didn't think much of that plan either. "I don't like the idea of any strange bird coming into my house," she objected. "And you know yourself that you've always felt the same way about strangers." "I know," he replied, "but this is different. I'll find a brisk young fellow somewhere, and after a day or two, you won't mind his being here. He'll seem just like one of the family." It took a good deal of urging before Mrs. Rusty consented, but at last she said she was willing to give the plan a try. Though she felt sure that it was bound to cause trouble somehow. So that is how Rusty Wren came to hang a sign outside his door which said, "Boy Wanted." Chapter 14. Too Many Callers. The news of Rusty Wren's sign, "Boy Wanted," spread like wildfire through the whole of Pleasant Valley. Rusty had put the sign out at daybreak, and before sunset as many as 50 of the field and forest people had come shyly to Farmer Green's dooryard. Some of them came to apply for the position, and some of them merely wanted to see the sign, for it was a most unusual sight in that neighborhood. There were others, too, such as Fatty Coon and Tommy Fox, who said that while they didn't care to visit Farmer Green, in the daytime. They expected to call there during the night and take a look at Rusty Wren's home and the odd sign upon it. Yes, so quiet a person as Rusty Wren, who never wandered far from home, had become famous in a day. Yet it proved to be a very bad day for Rusty's family, because he had almost no time at all in which to try to bring home any food. No sooner had he talked with one caller than another knocked at his door, and so the steady stream of strangers kept him busy as a little red wagon, as Farmer Green would remark. It was a discouraging business, to say the least. Though Rusty had advertised for a boy, persons of all ages appeared and wanted to work for him. Some of them were old enough to be his grandfather. And what was worse, they were all so big they couldn't squeeze through Rusty's little round door. The hole in the syrup can, you will remember, was only slightly larger than $0.25. Of course, there was no use of his hiring a helper that could only do half the work. What Rusty wanted was somebody that could not only catch an insect, but bring it right up inside the house and drop it into the mouth of one of his children. At last, when Rusty had almost given up all hope of finding anyone of the required size, a young English sparrow flew up and said boldly that he was the very person for the position. He claimed that he could get in and out of Rusty's door without any trouble, and he was just about to prove his claim too when Rusty Wren stopped him. "Wait a moment," he told the sparrow. "My wife is calling me, and I must see what she wants." So he disappeared inside the house to return shortly with a doleful look upon his face. "I'm afraid you won't do," he said to the young English sparrow. "Ah," cried the stranger impertinently, "it's easy to see that your wife rules the house, and since that's the case, I'm very glad I'm not going to work for you." He flew away then, with a jeering laugh which made Rusty Wren feel quite uncomfortable. Now Mrs. Rusty had overheard the talk outside her door, and she had no intention of letting any rude, noisy English sparrow, even if he was a young one, come inside her house. That was why she called to her husband, and she made the matter so plain that Rusty knew there was no use of trying to change her mind for her. Things were growing worse and worse. The children were all cheeping for food, until Rusty Wren could hardly endure the noise, and he, too, felt painfully hungry. Chapter 15. Mr. Chippy's Son. Rusty Wren was hurrying out of his house to find some supper for his family when he almost bumped into a young chap who was gazing at the sign, "Boy Wanted," which still hung outside Rusty's door. He was a likely-looking lad, who wore a bay cap on his head. He had excellent manners, too. He said, "Good evening," to Rusty very pleasantly, and touched his cap. No doubt he would have taken it off, had it not grown right over his head. "I see you want a boy," he observed. "I certainly do," said Rusty Wren. "What is your name?" "They call me Chippy Jr.," the youngster told him. "Is that so?" Rusty exclaimed. "Then your father must be Mr. Chippy, who lives in the wild grapevine on the stone wall by the roadside." Chippy Jr. nodded brightly, and when he said, "Chip, chip, chip, chip," Rusty knew that there could be no doubt about it. "Wait just a moment," he told Chippy Jr. "I want to speak to my wife about you." And then he darted back into his house. "My dear," he said to Mrs. Rusty, "I've found the very person. Little Mr. Chippy's son is outside, and I'm sure we ought to be glad to have a modest young man like him to help us." "He comes from a good family," Mrs. Rusty admitted. "But don't you know that the Chippies are bigger than we are? Not much bigger, to be sure, but Mr. Chippy certainly couldn't get through our doorway." Quite true, my love, Rusty Wren agreed. But it's his son, not he, that wants to work for us. And this young lad is not full grown. I should say he was hardly my size. Though his wife hesitated, she could think of no further objection. So at last she told Rusty that he might ask Chippy, Jr., to come back early next morning. But I have a feeling that this is going to lead to trouble, she said once more. Rusty Wren said nonsense. He was overjoyed at the prospect of having a spry young helper, and he hurried out to tell Mr. Chippy's son that he might start to work at daybreak. That polite young man touched his cap again, promised that he would return without fail, and then went chipping away towards home, for it was already his bedtime. For all he was still hungry, Rusty Wren slept better that night than he had for a long while. He felt as if a great load had been lifted off his shoulders. He slept so soundly, in fact, that he never waked up at all when Fatty Coon and Tommy Fox came at midnight to view his sign, Boy Wanted. They made a good deal of noise, too, grumbling not a little because there was not the least sign of a sign anywhere they looked. As soon as he had engaged Chippy Jr. to work for him, Rusty Wren had taken down the sign Boy Wanted, and so all further callers were bound to be disappointed. Chapter 16. The Accident. Chippy Jr. proved to be a great success. Even Mrs. Rusty Wren had to admit before he had finished the first day's work that he was an agreeable person to have about the house. Of course, he isn't much of a singer, she remarked to Rusty, but he seems to have a quick eye for an insect, and he is kind to the children. He is very neat besides. I have watched him sharply, she added, and I haven't caught him tracking any dirt into the house, nor brushing off his clothes onto my clean floor either. Rusty, too, declared himself well satisfied with his helper. He's a spry worker, he said, and he can get through our door as easily as I can. He went in and out of the house 257 times today, and not once did he get stuck in the doorway. For several days, everything went so smoothly in Rusty Wren's household that his wife began to feel more like herself again. Jasper Jay did not come near their house to annoy them, and there was plenty of food for all, thanks to the untiring efforts of Chippy Jr. Though she tried her hardest, Mrs. Rusty couldn't think of anything to worry about, and her husband frequently remarked that it was a lucky day for all of them when he decided to hire a boy. Both Rusty and his wife had quite forgotten the strange feeling of that good little lady's that some sort of trouble was coming to them on account of taking an outsider into their house. So the days passed happily for them, and all the while their 6 children were fast growing bigger. The proud parents often remarked that they had never before known youngsters to change so rapidly. So interested were Rusty and his wife in their children that they failed to see that Chippy Jr. was growing likewise. Indeed, he now overtopped Rusty by half a head. But the Wrens, both husband and wife, entirely overlooked that fact. Neither did they happen to notice that Chippy Jr. was beginning to have a good deal of trouble squeezing through the door. For some reason, due perhaps to the way the opening was made, he could get into the house more easily than he could get out of it. He said nothing about this new difficulty, not wishing to disturb the happiness of the Wren family, nor find himself out of work either. Since he continued to grow from day to day, there could be but one outcome, and at last, when Rusty came home late one afternoon, with a plump insect in his bill, he found Chippy Jr. blocking the doorway. His head peered out through the round opening, and his face wore a worried expression. "Hurry up," said Rusty Wren. "I want to come in." and at that Chippy Jr. began to struggle to get out, but he couldn't move, either forward or back. "Be spry," Rusty said impatiently. "Don't keep me waiting, boy." Uh-oh. Looks like Chippy Jr. is stuck. Chippy Jr. looked actually frightened. "I'm stuck fast," he cried. "I can't move either way." Chapter 17. Help, help! "Help, help!" Rusty Wren called loudly to his wife. "What's wrong?" she screamed. Since she was inside the house and Rusty was outside with Chippy Jr. blocking the doorway, of course she was alarmed, for she couldn't see her husband. "This boy's stuck fast in our door," Rusty cried, "and you must help me move him." "Very well," she answered in a frightened tone. "But if we can't stir him, I don't know what we'll do." And she began to shriek. "Don't worry," Rusty shouted. "Just say when you're ready." "I'm ready now," she replied. 1, 2, 3, all together!" Rusty Wren commanded, and he seized the head of Chippy Jr. and began pulling as hard as he knew how. Chippy Jr. at once let out a frightened cry. "Stop! Stop!" he begged. "I don't know what the trouble is, but I feel as if I should break in two." "Well, well," exclaimed Rusty Wren, and then to his wife he said, "Were you pushing or pulling?" "Pulling," she explained. "I was tugging on his coat-tails." "Ah, that was the trouble," Rusty told poor Chippy, who looked quite distressed. "I was trying to pull you out, and she was trying to pull you in. But you mustn't mind a little mistake like that." "Very well," said Chippy Jr. meekly, "but please don't do it again." "Now," Rusty directed his wife, so that she might understand clearly what was required of her. "Now you must push while I pull." All their efforts, however, failed to move the unfortunate Chippy Jr. He remained wedged tightly in the doorway, and at last Rusty declared that they might as well stop trying to get him through it. "What you must do now," he directed his wife, "is to pull on Chippy Jr.'s coattails while I push against his head, and in that way we may be able to clear our doorway." That plan worked better. In a short time, Mr. Chippy's unlucky son suddenly slipped backward, knocking Mrs. Rusty Wren flat on her back. And Rusty himself tumbled into the house and fell on top of the heap. As soon as they had picked themselves up, Rusty Wren and his wife and Chippy Jr. looked at one another for a few moments without saying a single word. Mrs. Rusty was the first to break the silence. If a house may be said to be silent when there are 6 children in it, all clamoring for something to eat. "I knew we should have some sort of trouble if we took a stranger into our home," she wailed. "Why, what's the matter now?" Rusty inquired in surprise. "Matter?" she groaned. "Here's this great lout of a boy inside our house, and we'll never be able to get rid of him. Instead of his helping us to feed our children, we shall have to feed him. And now we are worse off than we ever were before." Chapter 18. The Puzzle. Rusty Wren looked quite crestfallen as he listened to his wife's wail. He wished that he had heeded her warning when she declared that his hiring a boy would certainly lead to trouble. "What's the matter with you?" Rusty asked his helper, Chippy Jr. "When you first came to work for us, you could slip through our doorway easily enough, but now you're altogether too big." Chippy Jr. said that the entrance to their house must have shrunk. How could it? Rusty demanded impatiently. It rained last night, the youngster reminded him. But Rusty Wren said, Nonsense! The doorway's made of tin, not wood. You have grown. That's the whole trouble. And you've got us into a pretty fix. I begin to think that it was all planned this way by your father, Mrs. Rusty told her husband, so Mr. Chippy wouldn't have to take care of his son. But I don't intend to adopt a big, overgrown boy like him, not when I have 6 small children of my own. Chippy Jr. couldn't help feeling both uncomfortable and unhappy. I want to go home, he blubbered. It's almost my bedtime, and my father and my mother won't like it at all if I have to stay here all night. Well, said Rusty Wren, I don't know how you're going to leave our house if you can't squeeze through the door. So I'll hurry over and tell your father about this trouble, and he can break the news gently to your mother. Then Rusty went off, flying directly to the stone wall where the Chippy family lived, and soon he was explaining to Mr. Chippy how his son was inside their house and couldn't move. Now Mr. Chippy was unusually mild-mannered, but he became greatly excited as soon as he heard Rusty's story. It's like being caught in a trap, he exclaimed, and I can't help feeling that you've played a trick on my son, probably to please Johnny Green. If you don't set my boy free tomorrow morning at daybreak, I shall certainly make trouble for you. Mr. Chippy's warning amazed Rusty Wren, but he couldn't help laughing at the idea of anybody causing him any trouble. I'm so deep in trouble now, he told Mr. Chippy, that there's nothing you can do to make matters any worse for me. I've 6 growing children to bring in, and now I have your son to take care of, and my wife thinks everything is my fault, because I wanted to hire a boy to help me catch insects. So you can't scare me by your threats. I only wish you would come to my house and take your son away with you, if you can. I'll come, and I'll tear your house down, Mr. Chippy cried fiercely, and he began screaming chip, 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 in a very shrill voice, which was most annoying to hear. Rusty Wren did not like to listen to him, so he flew back home and went to bed. He only wished that it were possible for Mr. Chippy to break into his house and rescue Chippy Jr., but since the house was made of tin, Rusty knew that Mr. Chippy was helpless. I'll never settle in a tin house again so long as I live, he groaned. Sorry for the cliffhanger, but we're gonna have to leave it to be continued for tonight.